Hi, welcome back to the Casual Watch Review channel. So you want to have a go at making your own watch, and you've seen some of the DIY watch kits on the internet, but you're not sure which way to go. I've reviewed two previous kits on the channel, both from DIY Watch Club, but this is a new kit from Namoki Mods. So I'm going to do a review of the Namoki Mods kit in particular and the watch, and then I'll also splice in a little bit of a comparison between this kit and the DIY Watch Club kit, because even though they are both principally the same, there is a few differences, and then hopefully it'll give you an idea of which way that you want to go. So before we dive into this, a few key facts about these kits. They're called DIY watchmaking kits, but in reality, you're just assembling the watch and customizing them a little bit. It probably teaches you more about customizing watches than it does as a watchmaking tool, because the movement comes completely assembled. And I've had a few questions on previous videos about, well, that's not a proper watchmaking kit if you're not making the movement. If you think about it, that would be very hard to do, because most of these kits use the NH35A or a Miyota movement, and they come from those factories fully assembled. So these modding companies would then have to disassemble the movement, split it into its component parts for you then to reassemble them. And there's a big margin for error there if they're disassembling and reassembling the movement. If you're interested more in assembling movement and servicing watches, then you're far better off buying all pocket watches. There's some great YouTube channels as well that go through assembling and servicing movements as well. These kits don't fall into that bracket. They fall into a bracket of, if you want to learn how to assemble a watch, if you want to understand the components of the watch, and if you want to get into watch modding as well, they're great for that, and especially this Namoki Mods kit. The kit itself comes with everything you need to make one watch, and there's various different types of watches on their website, although they all fall into the field watch aesthetic, whereas the DIY Watch Club, that does have different types of watches. It has dress watches, dive watches, and skeletonized watches as well. These Namoki Mods kits are essentially using components that they already sell on their website to where you can mod your own watches, usually Seiko watches. So when you first get the kit, you get the component pieces for the watch itself. So you get the dial, the hands, the case back tool, gaskets, crown, and then you get all of the tools that you need. These tools aren't the best quality tools that you can get. They're very basic tools. They serve the job, but at least it gives you awareness of what the tools are and how they're used. And then if you want to become more of a serious watch modder, you can upgrade each of the tools. The sky's the limit with some of these tools. You can spend many hundreds of dollars on a set of screwdrivers, for example. The difference between Namoki Mods and the DIY Watch Club, I would say Namoki Mods is more of a kit for somebody that is basically familiar with how you would assemble a watch, because the instructions are literally just one piece of paper. The DIY Watch Club has an entire portal with videos for every single stage of assembling the watch that goes into a lot of detail. Very straightforward, actually narrated by a British narrator as well, so it's quite clear to follow. Namoki Mods, the instructions are very useful. They're pictorials, so you can follow it. The only thing I would say where the DIY Watch Club excels is around the hands, and we'll go into that a little bit more when we talk about the assembly. It does show online and in the instructions a movement holder, but I didn't get that with my kit. Instead, I got a case back tool, which I did end up using to hold the movement, but it wasn't the best way of doing it. There is proper movement holders as well. Now, you could use as a movement holder the plastic case that the movement came in, but it's not that easy to do when you're assembling the hands, because a movement holder gives you that separation where you're not pressing down on either the front of the watch or pressing down on the back of the rotor when you're trying to attach the hands or push the dial onto the movement. The premise of this video is I'm just going to review the kit. I'm not going to do a step-by-step. It's not a tutorial on how to make the watch. I'll just go over some of the key areas as well, because part of the fun is assembling it yourself. If I tell you every single detail about how to assemble it, I don't want it to take any of the fun away. So there was two areas that were quite scary that took a lot of patience. One was removing the dial feet from the back of the dial. There's a set of 4 dial feet, but you have to break off 2, and they don't snap off easy. You have to rock them back and forth, and I was paranoid about leaving a little bit of the dial foot on there or actually damaging the front of the dial. So it might be better to use some wire snips to actually get this much closer, but I followed the instructions and used the tweezers to break them off. The shame with this particular one that I got was the kit that I wanted was out of stock, and it was one that had a display for the date. This watch is their field watch, which I usually don't like watches without the date, but they did a really good job of this field watch. But it doesn't have a date window, and there is a ghost date on there as well, and I know that bothers some people, and it bothers me a little bit to know that there's a date there but you can't see it. So just so you know, if you get one of the versions that is dateless, the date wheel is still there. I think you could remove the date wheel, but you might as well just leave it in. Then it talks about lining up the hands on the movement as the next step, and this is the most frustrating part of the build, and it's the same with the DIY Watch Club as well. Getting the hands onto a watch, if you're not familiar with how to do it, is very time consuming, and there's not much margin for error. And this is something you're just going to have to get a feel for. I can't really explain how to get the hands on, because you get 3 different tools and you have to use the correct tool in order, because each of the hands obviously is a slightly different on the pinion. You have to apply force, but just the right amount of force, and I think that's where the DIY Watch Club excels, because they have not only a complete video on this, how to attach the hands, which gives a lot more detail about how to do it, but one of the other big advantages of the DIY Watch Club, which is different than a Namoki Mods, is Namoki Mods only includes 1 set of hands, whereas all the DIY Watch Club watches that I've reviewed have at least 2, or in some cases several sets of hands, so that if you do end up damaging the hands, you do have a replacement set. And as you can see, part of the hand on this watch, the loom, is damaged. Now, I don't think I did this, and I've watched the video back, and I don't think that I actually did damage the hands. It is possible, to be honest, but I think that they came out of the packet damaged. But with the DIY Watch Club, I could have just replaced it out with the spare hands, whereas the Namoki Mods hands, you only get 1 set, so you only really get 1 go, and if you mess it up, you've messed it up. You have to order another set of hands. Now, the hands are very high quality, and I like the way the loom matches the dial, slightly vintage loom, and I think the handsets are better than what you get with the DIY Watch Club. Overall, I think the difference between the DIY Watch Club is that you're getting a watch where the assembly is the process, and the watch at the end, isn't something that I would have worn on either the dress watch, even though I really enjoyed making the dress watch because it had the bluing of the hands. You could use a blowtorch to blue the hands, but both that watch and the dive watch, they had it's their own designs. And if you don't like their own designs, then you're a bit stuck, really. Whereas I think the Namoki Mods, especially if you're a Seiko fan, they've done a really good job of the design of these watches. They do have a cheeky one that looks a bit like a Rolex OP, which I'm not too crazy about, but the rest of them, they have a very nice, familiar Seiko design to them. And they also sell the dial and hands on their website as well, so you could easily mod the watch afterwards. But I think overall, the look of the Namoki Mods watches is much better than the DIY Watch Club ones, the ones that I've personally reviewed in the past. The advantage of the Namoki Mods cases is they are very well machined. This is a top class case. As a start out kit, I think this is a great value for money. The DIY Watch Club kit I was really impressed with as well, but I would say the pros of the DIY watch kit are that the instructions are a lot more clear because they have all of those videos. I also mentioned about you get several sets of hands as well, and it's using familiar movements as well, so you could mod those again afterwards if you wanted to with Seiko components. The Namoki Mods, I would say its advantage are very straightforward instructions, and you're getting a very good looking watch as well, and they're a really good price. I think $270 for this is honestly an absolute bargain. More importantly, let me know if you've got any questions in the comment section down below, and let me know what you think. As always, really appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and hit that thumbs up button, and I'll see you next time on Casual Watch Reviews.